Tenet is written and directed by Christopher Nolan and stars John David Washington, Elizabeth Debicki, Kenneth Branagh, Robert Pattinson, and among others. And this story, it deals with a CIA agent who is uncovering a plot that involves with, not going to go into spoiler detail, but it deals with pretty much time chronologically in a plot that he's trying to stop World War III on. And I'm gonna leave it there because this is actually one of those films that, if I kind of described, it's a lot more complex than what the basics is going on with it. But if you've seen from the trailers, it basically deals with them using technology that allows it to reverse time, so to speak. And that's basically what the main theme goes with this case. Now, here's some little backstory. Now, if you've been following my channel for a while, I've actually did a Christopher Nolan retrospective on. I reviewed some director Christopher Nolan's films on our website at filmfreaks.com that you're welcome to check out. I did some written reviews back in 2017 when Dunkirk was coming out. And I've admired the guy as director for a long time, and I've finally been able to check out pretty much every one of his films that I've seen. And other than there might be my least out of all of his movies that I've enjoyed all of them. My only one that I'm not really like a huge fan of, even though I still liked the film, was his first movie called Following, because since that was his first movie that he directed and wrote and everything, that was actually the one that put him on the map. It's actually he's become a director that consistently has made great work throughout the entire his career in Hollywood as a director, and I've always admired him not only as a director but also the way he tells storytelling, with how he puts into a lot of great themes of guilt and a lot of great compassion, to how he puts a lot of focus into a lot of our main characters in every one of these films, including, and in my opinion, he did the same thing great with how he dealt with the Batman trilogy, with the Dark Knight trilogy. And so ever since I saw the trailers for this movie coming out, I really got pumped for it. And since we've been living in the pandemic nowadays, this was a film that took quite some time to actually really get going and come out. And Nolan's been trying to push through, trying to put the movie in theaters and everything, and since to try to basically bring back theaters and to be the first major big box office release. And the movie finally got a chance to come into theaters not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and I got a chance to see it in IMAX when I was in Branson, Missouri, a couple weeks ago. So I'm a little late coming to the review, and I apologize if I'm not as on point as I should be, since I saw the movie over a week and a half ago, and I might not be as be good on as far as details that I might miss in the movie about. So bear with me as best you can, because this is going to be one of those films that, honestly, that after I was hearing a lot of things about it, it got me really interested from its plot that it was going with. But then I started seeing some other early reviews of it and everything, and it became a film that I think is going to definitely be a lot polarizing for a lot, because it's a film that, depending on how you feel about Christopher Nolan's films, it's a movie where you have to really kind of study your thoughts on. And it's a film that, in a way, it's kind of like how I felt with the first time watching Memento, to a certain point, because Memento to me still holds up as my favorite Christopher Nolan film. And even though I still was kind of confused on certain things about the way it was planned out with that film on a direction standpoint, I still got the overall vibe with it. But this one, I will admit, after upon finally seeing the film, while I do enjoy it, it definitely is a film that does have quite its problems, that keeps it going from being as one of Nolan's best, in my opinion. And I think it also has to do with the fact that it's telling a very complex story that it may actually require multiple viewings to watch to really get the case of it, because it deals with the same way where the first time I watched Inception, that was actually a film that Nolan also directed, that I also was confused at first with, and it took me a second time to rewatch it to really get the grasp of it. So forgive me if this may seem like I'm trying to not really understand certain plot points with the film, because the way that the movie kind of played out, it felt like it really was trying to give us a whole lot of plot, but it also struggled, I think, also with its problems with not giving us the motivation for our main character, and also to really elaborate a lot of things on how this technology, this whole theme of time travel works, so to speak. But with that being said, to get my pros out of the way, before I get into my cons, to get my pros out of the way, the cast I thought were phenomenal. John David Washington, this is my first time seeing him in a film. I haven't seen his breakout role in BlacKkKlansman, but I will Sunday probably check that movie out. But I thought he was really great in the film, and I thought he really put a lot of great, A game to this, and you really follow his the way he pulls it off with the action scenes and stuff. I think he could really pull off like a future superhero film, especially from the way that he portrays it in the physical area, and the way that he carried a lot with the way with his interactions, especially with Robert Pattinson and Elizabeth Debicki. So I thought he was great, and I also really enjoyed Robert Pattinson was good too. He's not quite as focused as in this as he is compared as I thought he would be, but when he's on screen, he still brings what he can to his performance. I thought he was excellent. But I think the two that stand out for me the best are actually Elizabeth Debicki and Kenneth Branagh, because this is actually something that, with the story the way it plans out, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but there's a plot going on with her. She is an art dealer, and I think she's an art dealer if I remember correctly. And Kenneth Branagh, who is her estranged husband, who's basically going through a lot of the motions and stuff with him being estranged and stuff because they had a past history that dealt with abuse and all that. And I liked the way that story was going on, and it got me interested with what they were doing with it. And I could really see what Nolan was putting in for and trying to make something out of it, because it does have a good payoff in the end that I enjoyed with it. It's kind of seems like the movie was taken into 2 points. You had stuff going on with them pretty much trying to stop this time travel plot, with them having to stop weapons from going off. And there is a lot of great things that I enjoy being invested with, including a lot of the action scenes that keep me going, to where even though I'm still not understanding a lot of in the first hour of what's going on, as the movie starts to pick up in the second half, I started to really digest to see what they were doing with it. And when we actually get to a lot of what's understanding of what's happening with everything going on, I did start to see where Nolan was trying to put a lot of effort into its complexity with the way that they plan it out. It's just that the first hour I was more interested with the conflicting relationship between Elizabeth Debicki's character and Kenneth Branagh's characters a little more than the overall plot itself. But with that being said, it does start to unravel some things later on, especially in the final climax, when we get we do get a good reveal that I actually did enjoy of how this whole thing worked out for it. And that's my other big point that I like to give a lot of credit for, is Nolan was able to do something very similar to Memento that I enjoyed this, with basically doing things in reverse chronological order. And because for those of you who have seen Memento, if you remember how that movie played out, it played it to where the movie played out in black and white scenes where you had stuff going in the past and then stuff that was in color that was in the present. So it was almost like they basically took that kind of structure, but like they put it overlapped to where, not going to go into spoilers, not huge spoilers or anything, but they do it in a kind of backwards type of forwards type of thing that I thought was pretty clever, the way Nolan pulled it off with the direction. And that's the other things I got to appreciate too, is a lot of the action scenes and the way they're shot and everything. This was definitely worth it at IMAX alone, because a lot of the scope that he puts into with the way the action scenes are shot, with all the explosions, and the explosions, the buildings are basically blowing out and they're pulling back in when time is reversed, I thought was outstanding. And I do like a lot of my biggest point, my two biggest standouts are the points where John David Washington is on the highway and he's going down there, and the car just ends up flipping and then it ends up coming back, like you see in the trailer. That was awesome. And there's a whole sequence that involves with that more in depth that I won't reveal. But the way they planned it out, that was pretty cool. The way they timed it, and the way you're basically seeing when they actually use the whole reverse time thing, that you're seeing people basically moving forward while time is basically moving backwards. Well, and I also got to really enjoy the climax, the way it paid off with it too, which I thought was pretty cool with the way we get to our big battle at the end of it, which was pretty awesome. And so, one of my other biggest standouts to me, I think, worked the best was the score that was by Ludwig Göransson. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. This composer, even though it's not excuse me for a second. Even though it's not composed by Hans Zimmer, I still thought it was a great, score that really felt the edge, and that whole like kind of synthetic type of music that they put in, especially in the trailers and stuff, is not only gets you really pumped, but it really gives you the vibe of showing something very epic. And that's what I loved a lot about with Nolan's movies, that when they give us a Hans Zimmer type of score, especially something like this, it really makes you feel on the edge. And there's a lot of intense scenes where, time is just on the essence, and it moves at a pretty good pace for it. And so, now I have to get into some of my cons. And like we were saying earlier, excuse me. This basically gets into more of the plot, and how basically the reason why it holds me back a whole lot is because, unlike other Nolan films, especially Inception, how you're pretty much diving deep into the story and you're really getting invested of where the characters are growing and the characters are going, and you really get to know like pretty much who they are, so to speak, and they have a purpose. This one, I wasn't really feeling it much, and the biggest problem, I think, comes from the writing that Nolan did with this. With John David Washington's character, unfortunately, doesn't have backstory, and he's just simply called the protagonist, and his whole really purpose really is to really go after Elizabeth Debicki's character because of her ongoing conflict with Kenneth Branagh. And I felt like there wasn't really much of a purpose, so to speak, and really much of a journey for his character. And I think that was a big letdown, because there were other films that Nolan's that they really dive deep into that I was hoping that they were going to put a lot of really good, type of vibe for it. Especially giving us that type of, maybe he has a tragic, past or something. But no, we don't really get anything with this character. And that's the same thing with a lot of the other characters in this, because Robert Pattinson's character is supposed to be a character that's not going to spoil anything, but he has supposedly a history. He has I'm going to just say history with John David Washington's character, but unfortunately, it's just it's not really elaborated much on. And that, to me, that's why I always thought the only characters I found interesting was Elizabeth Debicki's character, because of how she goes through with the abuse and everything with Kenneth Branagh, and it really shows a lot of she was the only one that really had much of an arc, so to speak, of where the movie found its most grasp in trying to unravel with the characters. And it's a shame, because a lot of I've enjoyed a lot of the way that they what Nolan does in his other films, but it felt like it just lacked a lot of emotion. It lacked a lot of really invested opportunities that they really could have pulled off more in this. And the other thing too is that I question, and this is something I really can't go into deep without going to spoilers, I really question some of the longevity with how things just all of a sudden just conveniently happen toward the end of it, which I thought was questionable, especially some of the rules they established with the way that the reverse time works in some cases. And while it is clear of what we get of why, certain things are happening toward the end, from the beginning of how this all works, it really feels like they could have spent a lot more time on it to really given us more, and it just feels like the movie's just kind of empty in that regard. And another thing I have to commit to is I didn't have this problem quite as much as other people, but I did have it in some cases. There is some sound mixing issues that I did kind of notice in a couple scenes, where there would be dialogue going on with certain characters, and it the sound was a bit off, but it wasn't. It only happened just a couple of times. So when it happened, it was kind of hard to hear in some cases because some of the characters were muffled in some scenes, and that's because because Nolan was shooting the scenes on IMAX cameras, which are very loud, and so that can be something that can be very. I can understand a lot of complaints with. But overall, though, I still thought that Tenet itself was still a good movie. It's just that it's definitely not Nolan's best, so to speak. So with that being said, I'm going to give the movie low compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. So, for those of you who have also seen Tenet and Christopher Nolan's other films that he's directed, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And if you like what you see here, feel free to check out more on my channel and some other reviews here in our website at filmfreaks.com. Stay safe, and I'll see you in our next review. I'll see you there.